Even with midterms around the corner, advocacy groups in Georgia are still fighting for voting rights. With electoral maps potentially suppressing the state's black voters, what does that say to young people about the future of national politics? I'm Dometi Pongo, and this is MTV News Need to Know. Voters in Georgia were dealt a major blow when a federal judge ruled to keep the state's allegedly racially biased district maps in place for this year's midterms. Georgia's black population has grown by an estimated 500,000 people in the last 10 years. And the latest census was meant to reflect that so electoral maps could be drawn in ways that accurately represent the population. But the ACLU tweeted that the Georgia General Assembly should have drawn at least a half dozen additional new black majority districts in light of the tremendous growth of the state's black population in recent decades, but failed to do so. The ACLU is among the coalition of groups filing a lawsuit demanding a fair rewrite of the state's electoral maps. Judge Steve Jones agreed that the current map may violate the Voting Rights Act and could indeed dilute the black vote, but ruled that it's too close to the primaries on May 24th to change them now. So basically, the judge knows that the current electoral map could be illegal, but will allow the midterms to continue as is. Now, this undermines the very premise of democracy. I mean, if the 2020 census was completed in order to stop these inequities, and it has failed to do so before the next election cycle, how are voters supposed to be inspired to keep engaging with the process? Maybe fatigue and apathy is what the system wants. Since the days of literacy tests, keeping oppressed voters mired in bureaucracy has been a strategy to maintain the status quo. Remember, Georgians showed up to the 2020 election in droves with the highest youth voter turnout in the country. But in 2021, Governor Brian Kemp gave politicians more power over elections and approved restrictions on voting by mail, something that voting rights groups argued was a way to disenfranchise voters of color. So what did the president have to say about disenfranchisement in Tuesday's State of the Union address? Well, he urged the Senate to pass the Freedom to Vote Act and the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. But he also made a declaration to fund the police, which got a standing O from both parties. Missouri Congresswoman Cori Bush tweeted, "With all due respect, Mr. President, you didn't mention saving black lives once in this speech. All our country has done is given more funding to police. The result? 2021 set a record for fatal police shootings. Defund the police, invest in our communities." This is frustrating for a lot of advocates. I mean, voting rights and police reform set the tone for the last election, but progress on both has been abysmal. You can empathize with voters feeling disillusioned. I mean, these are issues that put Joe Biden in the White House. For so long, the narrative has been that young voters and black voters aren't engaged enough. But in 2020, we saw record numbers of young people and black people at the polls. Yet the midterms are still rife with efforts to suppress their voices. Ending voter suppression in Georgia is an issue that Stacey Abrams is running on for governor this year. It's hard to tell people to go out and vote for candidates with progressive ideals after neither party has come through on its promises. So with national politics leaving many disillusioned, where can we expect to see results for our efforts? One answer is local elections. That's where the most impactful decisions come about in your community regarding school budgets, police precincts, housing, marijuana ordinances, and more. The lawsuit over Georgia's discriminatory district maps will continue. So yes, the fight continues. But if voters in Georgia hadn't shown up for the census in the way they did, advocacy groups would have never had the tools to fight for fair elections in the future. I'm Dometi Pongo, and that's what you need to know.